Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is episode number 35 of the Expected Returns podcast. Welcome back. Happy 2025. For those new to the program, my name is Stephen Luttman. I am a real estate investor and agent here in the capital region of New York State. A lot of fun things for us to get into, especially being the start of a brand new year. However, before we do, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy this, you'll also almost certainly enjoy our company newsletter as well, sjlincoln.com/join. That's where you can become a subscriber for 100% free. Again, sjlincoln.com/join is where you can go for that. A lot of fun topics for us today. Let's get into it. To kick things off today, I thought it would be helpful to take a quick look back at 2024. As we're looking to make educated guesses in our business for the new year, a great place to look is what has transpired over the past 12 months. So the first place we're going to look today is data coming to us from the National Association of Realtors. What have home prices done over the past 12 months? And according to NAR, the median sale price in our country ended the year right around $406,000. This represents a 4.7% increase from the year before. 4.7. Is that good? Is that bad? For some context, as we look into the future, a lot of the big platforms have come out with kind of their projections for where they see year-end 2025. Zillow, who I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, their expectation is home price growth is going to be right around 2.6, 2.7%. CoreLogic, who does data analytics for real estate professionals, they came in closer to 2%. From a historical perspective, 4.7 is going to be pretty close to what home prices have done. The historical norm is right around 4.5%. So it continues to be a great time to own real estate. However, looking to the future, 4.7 is going to be significantly higher than where a lot of the experts are thinking the next couple of years are going to be. Housing inventory, this is going to be the number of homes that are available for sale. This gets a lot of play in the media. And the thought behind that is, well, with so few houses available for people to purchase, that's what's making it so expensive, right? You have a lot of people chasing few goods. That also leads to inflation, right? But inflation also means higher prices. That's why we have higher home prices. However, as we can see through 2024, the number of houses available for sale increased quite a bit. So from starting the year right around 665,000, we ended the year right around 871. That is a significant increase. And not only from just 2024 are there a lot more homes available for sale. However, if we zoom out to the 5-year, we can see actually when we reached the peak back in November, that was higher than at any period going all the way back to late 2019. So there are more houses available for sale now than there has been in any period all the way back to late 19, early 20. That points to a more healthy market. Again, so few houses being available for sale is going to push up houses. So if we're looking for, are there any signs of potential affordability on the horizon? One good metric to look at is going to be, are there more homes available for sale? Now, an interesting wrinkle to this is, why was there such a steep fall off as we got towards year end? And we're going to jump over now to data from GCAR. This is the Greater Capital Region Association of Realtors. This is going to be more local data. From a sales price perspective, we actually beat the national average. We came in right around 6.3% in terms of median sales price growth. It's a great time to own real estate in the capital region, just like it was 12 months before that, 12 months before that. However, if we take a look at the inventory of homes for sale, also experienced a very similar fall off towards year end. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the spike in interest rates as we finished up the year. So if you remember, the Federal Reserve announced a cut to their federal funds rate. The expectation was that mortgage rates would kind of fall in lockstep with that. Instead, mortgage rates actually went up. And I'm wondering if the rise in interest rates, if you're a home seller, you kind of have a line of demarcation, right, between what interest rate you're willing to give up versus what the current market has. So when that gap grows, so you have your current interest rate, and there's kind of a pain threshold, right? Because you're trading up into what are mortgage rates today. And once that year-end rally kind of spiked for mortgage rates, that just increases the pain threshold, right? Or increases the amount of pain that if you were to sell your existing house with your current mortgage to go get a mortgage into current rates, it just became that much more expensive. So I'm wondering if that spike is why we saw inventory come down, where people just said, that's too high. I'm not interested in that. I'm not going on market. I'm going to keep my property for myself. So just a thought. But again, the number of inventory or the inventory of homes available for sale is significantly higher today than it was 12 months ago. So that's a very healthy thing to see. One thing that I think is very interesting to keep your mind on is going to be short-term rentals. Now, friends and family, clients, at the end of the year, I like to mail out, a physical year-end newsletter. And at the back of it, I always like to give out a few projections, a few guesses, predictions for the year ahead. This was one that was right on the cusp of being included. It didn't make it. I might throw it in for next year, but it is becoming harder and harder and more uncomfortable to run a short-term rental business in the United States. And this is specifically for New York State, but they passed, signed by the governor, legislation S88C, 885C, signed in towards the end of the year. This is essentially the government wanting to know who, what, when, where, why, for how much. The platforms, the Airbnbs, the VRBOs are now going to be required to provide the state of New York basically a summary every month or every quarter of how much per municipality, how many nights are being booked, how much taxes are being collected, how many people are doing it. So this is becoming more and more uncomfortable if you are a short-term rental operator. Nationally, we've seen a lot of cities start to crack down in terms of allowing them. Some are straight up restricting them. Internationally, it's no different. We saw Barcelona straight up announce over the next 5 years, they are going to 100% phase out short-term rentals. So by 2030, you will not be able to get a short-term rental if you happen to be visiting Barcelona. So a lot of municipalities are saying, hey, we need houses for people that are actually going to live here. We don't want you turning your house into essentially a hotel anymore. New York State, right on the top of the list. So something to keep your eye on. And finally, we'll wrap with what have interest rates been doing? So the long and the short of it is, while there has been some peaks and troughs, it really ended the year pretty close to where it started. So we're about, we started right around, call it 6.5, we're ending right around, so call it 0.25% increase. However, we did see highs back in May and then troughed all the way down in September. However, there wasn't a significant increase in interest rates. The big story was interest rates rising after the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to be cutting rates, which was not what a lot of people expected to see. They expected, well, if the short-term rates are going to come down, long-term rates ideally would be doing the same. Inflation concerns are really getting the best of the mortgage market. And as we look to the future, if we do expect that, let's say CoreLogic is correct, and there are 2% growth rate for home prices for 2025 is accurate, really for there to be any type of meaningful reduction in your monthly out-of-pocket for housing, you would need to see call it a full percentage point, realistically a full 1.5% decrease in your mortgage rate to keep up with home prices increasing. So are we going to see a full 1.5% decrease in interest rates in 2025? That would be a very significant move if we did. However, again, with prices continuing to increase, if we want to keep housing as affordable as it is right now, which a lot of people would say it's not affordable, but if we want to keep it even at that line, realistically, we would need to see a pretty significant reduction in mortgage rates as we head to 2025. Next up, big banks going after the elderly. However, before we get into that, just a quick word from today's show sponsor, SJ Lincoln Realty. That is my real estate brokerage here, helping home buyers and sellers throughout the capital region. If you or someone that you care about has a real estate related need in the capital region, let's connect. Steven at sjlincoln.com. sjlincoln.com/book a call is the website where you can schedule a Zoom or a phone conversation with myself. And again, that's Steven at sjlincoln.com, sjlincoln.com/book a call. Let's get back to the show. Next, we're going to pivot to a real world example as to why you should always get everything in writing. Now, there's an elderly woman who lives in Texas who unfortunately finds herself in a bit of a situation where her lender is foreclosing on her. And the lender is foreclosing despite the fact that she has been consistently making payments on her mortgage throughout the time period that she's had her loan. The issue she's running into is that at some point she had run into a bit of a situation. She'd asked for some type of change in her monthly payment. She was given an oral agreement to modify her payments. However, the bank is now saying, we don't have any record of that happening. She's not been paying her full mortgage amount. Therefore, we are now foreclosing on the debt. So let's go over a few instances of what exactly is happening here and potential remedies if you find yourself in a situation like this. So first and foremost, foreclosure. What is a foreclosure? Well, foreclosure is when an owner is not meeting their financial obligation. So this could be a mortgage foreclosure. It could be you don't pay your property taxes, your municipality can foreclose on you. But essentially, it's a lien against your property, and whoever is owed the money, the property is then sent to auction, and proceeds from the sale auction are then used to pay off the party who is owed the funds. So in this particular case, there's a mortgage on the property. The lender has said, we have not been paid on this mortgage. We need our funds. They are going after the property. Now, if you happen to find yourself in a situation like this, first and foremost, whatever type of agreement you enter into, especially anything financially, always needs to be in writing. And I don't care if this is someone you just met yesterday or a business relationship with someone you've known for decades. It absolutely needs to be in writing. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are no longer able to meet your financial responsibilities, what can you do? Well, there are a few topics I want to cover here. The first one is going to be a forbearance, a modification, and a refinance. Now, a forbearance is going to be kind of the shortest lifespan, the least intrusive in terms of the amount of work it takes to complete something like this. But what a forbearance is, it's basically a temporary pause. Now, when I worked in banking, sure enough, every December we would get calls from folks saying, hey, I need to get a forbearance on my car loan for 60 days. I need to be able to pay for Christmas gifts, whatever it might be. So a forbearance is essentially a short-term pause in your payments. The number of payments then get tacked on to the end of the loan. Now, you're still going to be paying interest on that period. You might be paying it during the period you're looking to forbear. It's possible the bank might tack that on to the end of the loan as well. But essentially, think of a forbearance as just a short-term pause in your expectations for making the payments. A modification is actually changing the terms of your loan. So this is going to could be an interest rate reduction. It could be a reduction in principal. We could be changing the number of payments you have left to space them out a little bit. So a modification can be a lot of different things, but it's essentially keeping your same loan. So your loan number is going to stay the same. The lender is staying the same. We're just changing some of the components within the loan to meet what your financial situation currently is. And again, both parties need to play along with this. This isn't you reaching out to your bank and saying, hey, I need to trim my interest rate, or hey, I owe you $20,000, but you know what? I think I'm only going to pay you $15,000. Both parties need to come together, have a conversation in terms of why you're struggling, get an agreement, getting in writing. That's going to be a loan modification. And the most serious, if you will, the one that's going to be kind of a complete retooling of your debt is going to be a refinance. A refinance does not necessarily need to be your existing lender. It could be any lender. It's going to be a brand new account number, brand new terms, brand new duration of the loan. Most likely could be a new dollar amount as well. So that's going to be brand new. So again, forbearance, very short term, temporary pause. Modification stays with your same lender. We're just fine tuning, critiquing some of the aspects within the loan itself. And finally, a refinance. Brand new loan, might be your current lender, might be a different lender, but that's a brand new altogether, essentially starting from scratch. So whatever one you decide to pursue, the main takeaway here is make sure it's in writing, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you have an agreement with Susie at the local credit union, and 2 years down the road, Susie leaves to go work at a different bank, and all of a sudden no one knows that you had this arrangement if you don't have it in writing. So it's an unfortunate situation. Most likely, it does look like that this woman is going to lose her house that she's lived in for decades and decades. But again, the main takeaway is anytime you're into any type of a financial relationship, please make sure you get it in writing. And finally, we'll wrap up today with something so silly you would think that can't possibly be true. And yet it actually is. The Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis released a paper recently, Property Taxes and Housing Allocation Under Financial Constraints. The thesis of the paper is that higher property taxes actually make housing more affordable. Let's get into who's behind this. So when you hear the Federal Reserve in the news, who is the Federal Reserve? Well, you have your Board of Governors, you have 12 regional banks, and you have what's known as the Open Market Committee. So one of the 12 regional banks is in fact the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And we see the authors behind this paper here from the New York University, from University of Hamburg. These are folks that have forgotten more about economics than I will ever possibly know. So these are very smart people. However, even smart people potentially do very silly things. And in my opinion, higher property taxes leading to more affordable housing is in fact one of those very silly things. So we'll take a look at an example here of kind of what they think higher property taxes could help in housing. So the example being, let's say you have a 70-year-old couple who 30 years ago purchased a 4-bedroom colonial. They've subsequently paid off the mortgage over the years. All of the kids have since graduated high school. They're out in the world doing their own thing. So now you just have an older couple living in this massively large house, but they've paid off the mortgage. So their housing allocation monthly payment is very minimal. It's essentially their insurance and their property taxes. The thought behind it is, well, if we were to raise property taxes to something more substantial, it creates a disincentive for situations like this, where you have people that have more housing than what they actually need. And in that case, what would they do? Well, they would look to downsize. They would look for something that's more appropriate for their stage in life. So that could be, renting an apartment, could be buying a smaller house, assisted living, something like that, which in turn would then free up this larger house for families that are younger, right? They're still growing and they need larger space. So that's kind of the main takeaway in terms of why something like this would make sense. You're creating a disincentive for people to hold on to more housing than what they actually need. Here's where it starts to fall apart. Now, when in terms of making housing more affordable, well, if we start to think, okay, well, if the property taxes are going to go up a certain dollar amount, in an efficient market, property sales prices should fall something to correspond with that amount. So in an efficient market, these things should even out. So there shouldn't be a significant change. And from an affordability standpoint, if you walk into your bank to get a mortgage, they're not going to be asking you, well, how much are you paying for the property? What they also want to know is how much is your insurance going to be and how much are your property taxes going to be? It's known as PITI, right? PITI, your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. So if you have a lower sales price, let's say, if your property taxes are going up by an equal amount, you haven't won anything, right? You're still in the same boat. So stating that more folks are suddenly going to be able to qualify to buy a home simply isn't true. One of the largest roadblocks, probably the largest roadblock preventing people from becoming or transitioning from renters to homeowners is going to be the down payment. That's always a big sticking point. So with a lower sales price, you could make the argument, well, now more people are going to be able to afford that lower dollar amount purchase price, because if we're looking at, a 3.5% down FHA or a 5% conventional, a lower sales price means I need to save a lower down payment. Something to keep in mind is whether you live in New York State or basically any other state in the United States, there are programs designed for first-time home buyers. These are grant funds, which are basically forgiven loans. So the qualifications for something like that are basically lower to middle income folks. There are loan programs out there for 0% down payments. Okay, so we're talking VA, USDA, even some banks are rolling out, hey, first-time home buyers, lower income folks, 0% down. So the argument that, well, this is going to help people because people are having a hard time saving for down payments, it's just not a reality. There is so much money out there in terms of grant programs as well as loan programs designed for people that are having a hard time saving for a down payment. So decreasing the sales price is not suddenly going to make housing more affordable for people because there are just so many more options out there. Where this gets really evil, however, is if this were implicated on a large scale, let's say, there would never have been a larger transfer of wealth from private individuals to government, certainly in my lifetime, and I can't imagine anything else that's come close to this. So we would be suppressing purchase prices, home values, right? Values are suddenly coming down just so we can increase property taxes. So that's more money to the government. But now all of us who are homeowners, who for a vast majority of people, a large section of their net worth is going to be in their primary residence, in their home. And the moment you start pushing those prices down, you are transferring all of that wealth from families, from folks like you, folks like me. And where are we pushing it? We're pushing it to the government. So this would be a substantial change in not only, how we think about the housing market of the United States, but realistically how we think about, wealth and generating the American dream and transferring all of that money to the government for their programs would be a very significant change. And in my perspective, would be very disastrous for the U.S. housing market. So this is a bad policy. This is a bad paper written by very smart people. But if you ever see something like this is the type of stuff we need to go after. We need to have conversations. If this comes up in a state legislature or local municipalities, higher property taxes are not a good thing. You should be fighting higher property taxes overwhelmingly. And something like this would truly be a disaster. So be on the lookout for crazy politicians trying to push something like this down your throat. Thanks for joining today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of the content. If you did like it, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. The best possible thing you can do for me is ask questions. I love answering questions from you guys, whether it's privately or on the podcast itself. So shoot those over to me. If you want something specific in terms of you're interested in purchasing real estate or doing something locally here in the capital region, my email address is steven@sjlincoln.com, or you can schedule a call with me, sjlincoln.com/book a call. sjlincoln.com/book a call, Steven@sjlincoln.com. Thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of this, and we'll talk again soon.